Hello everyone. Today there's something important on the line. Something you're gonna be using a lot, something anyone will pretty much use at some point, which is rigging, right? And in particular, it's going to be character rigging in this tutorial. And we're going to do the basics, right? So we're gonna build a character rig for the little guy that you see right here. I'm not talking about the spider, we're not gonna touch that. We're going to work on this little character of ours. Alright, so we're not going to go into too much detail yet. We're like the hands, fingers. That is going to be a separate tutorial. But the main rig is what we're going to be setting up. Right, so the torso, the abdomen, the arms, the legs, the head. We're even gonna do the tail. And we're gonna be working with inverse kinematics. Something very nice we can use to control movements of the character in a very natural way. Alright, so that's what we're going to be working on. I hope to learn you guys how to set it up yourself from scratch. So you can basically apply this technique to any character or anything you want to animate yourself. Right, so give you all the tips, the details, the tricks you can do. So let's dive right into it. Right, in Blender, I've got my character loaded up. This is what I'm going to work with. It is a character I made a while ago. The inspiration was Momo from Avatar. Many of you may remember him. It's a nice character. So this is what I want to rig. I want it to be animated. I want to animate it and pose it into whatever pose I want, pretty much. So that's what we're going to be working on. Alright, so whenever you want to move up or animate a character or an advanced mesh, it is usually a good idea to add an armature. And an armature is basically a system that will control the movements of your mesh, and you are able to add some advanced kind of movements to your armatures, which is very useful, as we will see later on. Alright, so inverse kinematics is something that's going to come up, which is short, also known for as IK. So an IK rig has inverse kinematics, something we use for arms, fingers, legs. We're going to use it for the tail here as well. So I'm not going to make the complete advanced armature. All right, this is meant to be a beginner's tutorial for the rig. So we're going to skip the fingers for now. We may do that in a different tutorial because it takes a little bit of time. But it's basically following the same IK working order as we're going to be doing for the arms and the legs. So we're doing arms, legs, we're going to do tail, main body of course, so we can animate the mesh, and then we will do probably the hands in a different tutorial. So this is going to be the beginnings of the character rig, right? Alright, so you have to know that if you are going to add an armature, it is always smart to have it start at the center of your mesh, right? At the center line of your character. Now, my character is symmetrical, so there's a very easy way. We can just set the origin to the center, which is right mouse, set origin to geometry. That's the one. So then it'll be placed at the center of your character. You can then move your 3D cursor, Shift S cursor to select it. Right? And then your 3D cursor will be there, and anything you add to your scene will appear on that location. Beautiful. Now, if your character is non-symmetrical, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but you can basically try to find a center point of your character. For example, if I go to edit mode, I have a center line right there, for example, and I could just select, for example, this loop right there if I want this to be the center. So double click it to select the entire edge loop, Shift S, and then just press cursor to select it, and then you can press tab, and then you can right mouse, set origin to 3D cursor, for example. You don't even have to set your origin as long as your bone is in the center. All right, I'm gonna Control Z a few times. Mine was in a spot where I wanted to keep it. Right, cursor is at the center of the mesh. Now, Shift A, armature, single bone. Right, we're gonna be starting from scratch because we want to be able to use this setup, this technique for every character pretty much, right? So you will know how to set it up from the start. Alright, so it partially disappears in our character, which is fine, but it is annoying for the viewport, right? We want to see where the bone starts, for example, and we can't see it. So I'm going to select in front here. Beautiful. Now, it is quite a big bone, not gonna lie. It looks quite big, it takes up most of our mesh. I don't really like that usually. So instead of displaying it as octahedral, I'm going to set this to stick. I basically think it looks cleaner. The only downside is that you can't see easily what the start point and what the end point is, because if you have octahedral, you've got the thicker starting point and the thinner end, as well as you can see the rotation, right? So if I go into edit mode and rotate this bone, which is something we're actually going to do in post mode, I guess, you can see that we can now see how it is rotated, which in a stick you won't be able to see, but that's totally fine. Okay, we can just switch this to octahedral whenever we need it, and we're not even going to need it, I think, this tutorial. So I'm just going to leave this as stick, so we have a little bit more of our mesh that we can see. All right, so now let's get into edit mode. That's where the most of our things this tutorial are going to be. It's going to be located. So I'm going to press tab to go into edit mode. There we go. Right, so in edit mode, you can select your top part, your bottom part of the bone. It has 2 points. Right, so you can move them separately as well. Now I'm gonna place this bottom point right at that pelvis area where the mesh of the body starts. I'm gonna select the top one and move that down GZ to about where the pelvis will end. Alright, perhaps somewhere right there. I don't know where the tailbone starts. We can even get a more... No, we can get more area actually. And this is where you have to keep in mind where you want your body to actually bend, right? So usually when you have a character that is, for example, has a larger shape, has a bigger belly, so has more volume, then this part of the belly doesn't have to move as much. But you can still make it move better, move more. And the way to do this is by just adding more bones, right? So I can move this down and extrude it one more time, which means we now have 2 bones there to control the movement. Gives us a little bit more detail. Alright, for this character, it is okay to just have this 1 bone right there. Beautiful. Extrude it one more time, lock it to the Z-axis, right there. EZ one more time, chest area, for example. And I'm going to move this all the way up to where the neck begins, right there. Now EZ, 1 more for the neck. Don't need to be more, doesn't have to be more. Like that. EZ, 1 more for the top of the head. Of course, because your skull, you can't bend your skull, right? It's a massive, it is a fixed object that you can't bend. It is very solid. So a 1 bone for that is plenty. Alright, so for now, this is gonna be perfect. Right away, I'm gonna select my bottom bone. Press F2 to rename that to pelvis, I guess. Second one, abdomen. Third one, chest. Fourth one, neck. I forgot to see neck. And last one, head. Alright, just like that. Alright, now we need more bones. But first, we have to align this properly. Remember, we don't only have a front view, we also have a side view. Press numpad 1. And now we're gonna locate all of these bones a little bit better with the mesh. Right, this one is fine. But I want this one to be more back. If you look at your own spine, you can feel it in your back, right? It is very close to your skin. So your spine is more towards the back of your abdomen, of your torso, than it is to the front. So I'm using that here as well, moving it back a little bit. I can even move this back a little bit if I want, right there. This one, move it just closer to the actual placement of your spine, for example. Neck, it's very much at the back as well. You can feel it in your neck if you go there with your hand, right? A little bit more up. And this one can be anywhere, pretty much at the top part of your head. Beautiful. Now, I want another bone for the arm, right? So I'm just going to select this part, and I'm going to press E, move it over to the right, selected bone, Alt-P, clear parent, right? So we can now move it around. This one's going to start right there at the base of my arm. Second point is going to be right at where I guess the elbow is going to be, somewhere right there. Extrude it one more time. Wrist, like that. And we're gonna make a simple armature today, right? Okay, we're not gonna include all of the hands. I can make a separate tutorial on that if you'd like. But today we're just gonna focus on the basic inverse kinematics armature of a character. Alright, so I'm gonna extrude 1 more for the hand, and that's it. Okay, let's now go to top view, and let's see the damage we've done. We've moved this we've extruded those bones completely behind our arm. Just gonna select all of them with the box select tool. You can select it right there. Select box, select them all, and just move them more to your mesh. This one has to be more to the wrist location. And this one I'm gonna move it to the middle finger there. Now it is always good to already give Blender an indication of where your bending point is and what direction your joint is gonna bend to, right? This elbow can't bend that way, right? Your forearm can't go that way. That's going against the human anatomy. It has to go that way, right? And you can try to do that yourself by just moving your arms out with your palms facing the floor. What direction would your elbow bend in, right? So we're gonna give that a little bit of a starting bend so Blender knows what way we're trying to bend it. Beautiful. Now name your bones. Remember, F2, upper arm, dot, important L, because all the bones we're gonna be mirroring, we're gonna name with dot L at the end. Enter this one too, for arm dot L, and this one too, hand dot L. Beautiful. All right, now you could add a pelvis bone, which is going to keep your structure a little bit better in place, but it's not important for now. All right, so we're gonna move to the legs. Select this bone, extrude, right there, and I will show you it with the legs, how it would look. Right, so select this bone, Alt P, sorry, select it, Alt P, clear parent is probably already unparented, there we go. It has no parent. And this is going to be the pelvis, right? So this is going to be a fixed bone that will not be able to deform. It is a hard mesh, right? You can't really bend your pelvis, right? Side view, let's check this out. This has to move more to our upper leg right there. Beautiful. This is going to be a pelvis. Quite all right, if you'd ask me. Now I'm gonna extrude that, select your upper part, Alt P, clear parent. Right, this is going to be the upper leg. I wanted to start at the leg, right there. Second part at the knee, right there. Extrude it to the ankle. Side view. Let's see, a little bit more down. And one more extrude for the tip of the foot, right there. And we could even make that two parts. So if we move it here, one more extrude to the left. Front foot, back foot. Sure, works. Why not? Like that. And let's, like I said before, let's give Blender an indication of what way it has to bend. We did it here as well, by default, so your toes can curl up. Well, if you walk, this is the kind of rotation that it will make, right? Same for the knees. It's going to be this way, just like that. Now give them all their names. Upper leg dot L. Second one, lower leg dot L. Now we can call this the heel.l, I guess. And this one, the toes.l. Beautiful. Now, how do we mirror a mesh? If you go to armature, there's a symmetrize option. That's all we need. Select the bones that you want to mirror and make sure that the entire bone is selected, not only the tip. Go to armature, symmetrize. Nothing happens. Oh my god. Well, something happened, but not the right way. Alright, if you ever get this, it means that your character is rotated. And, well, it is quite annoying, because in armature symmetrize, it will only symmetrize it in the X direction, and you can see that by hovering your mouse over it. Right, so it's going to try to symmetrize those bones in the X-axis, which is right there. We need the Y-axis. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z, sorry. And what I'm going to do is select my character, press RZ90. And I have to select my eyes as well, actually. RZ90. I'm going to select my bone and go to edit mode. First, tab A, RZ90. Alright, if you don't do that, and actually there's an issue because my armature and my character did not rotate around the same origin. Ctrl Z a few times. Excuse me, like that. Select my armature, right mouse, set origin. Origin to 3D cursor. Character should be around the same origin, actually. So let's try that again. RZ. Let's see with everything selected. Select everything. And make sure everything is at the same origin. Right mouse, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. Otherwise it's gonna be moving around the median point, which is going to be the median of your origins. Right, we want the origin to be at the 3D cursor, so let's set all of your objects' origins to the same point. RZ90. Beautiful. This one, RZ90. There we go. It is now in a better location. Now I forgot those iris points. Just gonna delete that. Don't care about it. Alright, let's try it again. Select your armature. Tab. Armature. Symmetrize. And it is still going to mirror around the wrong direction. My god. Alright, so let's press Ctrl A. Actually, Ctrl Z first. And make sure that you undo the symmetrize. Ctrl A. All transforms. Right mouse. Set origin. Or to the 3D cursor. And now tab. Armature. Symmetrize. There we go. Right, so we symmetrize it with the exception that we did not apply the rotation in the z-axis for some reason. Okay, so we have to apply that first and then symmetrize it. Makes more sense, doesn't it? Alright, so we didn't really get our pelvis. So go to edit mode, select your pelvis, armature, symmetrize. And why is that not working? Alright, so we didn't name this. That is the issue. F2, pelvis.l, armature. Symmetrize. Alright, so now you can see that only those bones named with .l or .r also works are going to be symmetrized. Okay, so remember that. Now we can start this entire series off by selecting our mesh and just holding shift, selecting the armature, Ctrl P, and armature deform with automatic weights, which means it's going to assign automatic weights to your bones and your mesh. Alright, done. Now go into your bones pose mode and try to move some stuff around. Alright, head is moving, hand is moving, arms moving, spine moving properly. Beautiful. Now of course our eyes aren't moving, but we can just parent that the same way, right? Select them all, hold shift, last select your armature, Ctrl P, with automatic weights. So there will just be parented to probably only this top bone now. Let's see. Very rotated. Yeah, it's looking perfect. Looking beautiful. Well, not completely perfect, but it is okay, right? Usually you would only parent this to the head bone. For example, if I now Ctrl Z this a few times and select those two eyes, hold shift, and now with the last bone selected, so sorry, with the armature selected as last, we go press tab, edit mode, select this one bone at the top, press tab to go out, Ctrl P, and now parent it to the bone, and it will parent it to the last selected bone, right? So only the head. If we now go to pose mode, it will only be dependent on the movement of the head. Now I'm guessing that this is mirrored some way. Yeah, it's mirrored, so that's why it's moving weird. Doesn't matter really. I'm just gonna keep it this way. Okay, I'm not even gonna worry about having that part mirrored. And maybe we can just apply it first, Ctrl Z a few times. And we're just encountering arrows together, which is fun. Alright, it's always fun to do. Alright, I'm gonna apply that mirror. And I'm just gonna select it again. Lastly, the armature, tab, make sure the head is selected, Ctrl P, bone. Alright, so if I am doing this correctly, this should now work. Yeah, beautiful. You can see the eyes now stick nicely to your head because it is only parented to one bone, which is what we need. Nice. Right, so how do we move it in a way where if you move your hand, for example, it moves the entire arm. And that is the entire inverse kinematics part that everybody in Blender, everyone that's rigging is going to be talking about. That's how you control a character in a very smooth, nice way. Okay? Easy way to set it up. Go to edit mode. We need 2 bones extra per IK chain pretty much. Alright, we need an IK controller and we need a pole target. And what both of them do is very simple. The controller will be the bone that you're going to be moving to move the arm. Okay, so that has to be at a position where you know it is going to be the control point. And it's not going to be the hand, but it's going to be the wrist. Alright? Because usually when you move your arm, it is going to follow your wrist pretty much, right? You can move your hand separately from your wrist. But if you move your wrist out, then you'll pretty much move your upper and your forearm. So it makes sense. So we can extrude this to the left, EX. Select it, Alt-P, clear parent. The position can remain, but we can name this hand IK.R, just like that. Now, same thing for the pole target. Pole target will define which direction your joint is going to bend to, right? So it will try to bend towards your pole target. Okay? So for example, for the elbow, we want to control the direction in which your elbow is rotating. And I'm sitting here rotating my arm to try to explain this to you. You can have your arm in a 90-degree bend, and you can still pretty much try and rotate your angle, which will make your lower arm move up or down, point to the sky or point to the floor, right? So that's what we can control with the pole target. So I'm going to extrude this to the bottom side, so E and Y. Okay, so remember, we want this to point towards where your arm can bend, right? So your elbow can move back, not really forth. So the pole target has to be in the part where it's going to bend in. All right, so select it, Alt-P, clear parent. And we're going to move this away a little bit, just like that. Okay, so when this pole target is right inside of the joint, Blender's not going to know what direction this pole target is headed, right? It doesn't know where to go. So make sure that it always is nicely a little bit away from the actual joint so it knows where to go, where to point at. Okay, name that arm. No, let's just name this elbow IK.L, right? It's going to be part of that IK chain. Okay, now go to pose mode. We need to create an IK chain somehow, an inverse kinematic chain. All right, so the way to do this is to pretty much select the bone that is first in the IK chain, which is the upper arm, or sorry, the lower arm, right? So it's the first bone that is connected to your IK controller pretty much. It's the first bone that's getting affected by the IK controller, okay? So that's where we're gonna add that bone constraint. Now you can go to the bone constraint tab, add a bone constraint, add an inverse kinematics. And the target is going to be that pole target. We first have to select the armature, which is the entire armature right there. And then we can select the actual bone, which is going to be the hand IK dot. Did I name this R? Am I that stupid? Go to edit mode and just check. Yes, I named this R. It's the left one. I'm just going to rename this to prevent any future issues, pretty much. Okay, so I'm going to go back to pose mode. Select my arm, my lower arm. I keep messing that up. And then select IK and just make this hand IK.L. That's going to be the controller, right? So that's going to be the actual target bone. And now we have an option of the pole target. Well, armature, and we actually have that as the elbow IK.L. All right, so that bone we created. Now your IK is going to twist. All right, sometimes, not always, sometimes it'll twist, give you a nice little dislocated shoulder in the process, which is nasty, but not unfixable. We're not doctors, but we can fix it even easier by rotating the pole angle, right? So it's gonna move our elbow towards the pole target, but we need to specify sometimes in what kind of angle that is to be. So usually you have to rotate this 90 or minus 90. Let's try 90. That's the wrong direction. All right, so we are going to move this the other direction. Minus. All right, that's looking better and better. So let's try minus 90. See how this looks. Doesn't look. All right, so maybe minus 180 then. Minus 180. It's usually those fixed numbers like 90, 180, minus 90, minus 180. You can try them all. One of them will probably look great, right? And first it's minus 180. And now we have our IK chain, but we still have to say the chain length. If this is set at 0, it will not be specified, which means it's going to try to affect the entire body. All right, we only want this to affect the second bone, right? This IK controller is only going to control our lower and upper arm. So we need a chain length of 2 bones. Very easy. Now if we select this controller, we can press G and move that. You can see that, oh my god, we have an actual IK chain in our arm. Wow. Isn't that just beautiful? It moves our arm nicely. We can make it wave. We can make it dance. Beautiful. Alright, we can even move this and try to play around with that pull target. If we now move this up, you can see the arm is moving, or the elbow is pointing towards that pull target, which is amazing. Right? Very, very beautiful. Now, what I should have mentioned, what I should have done, and I made this mistake before, don't worry, is we should have actually made this IK chain setup before we parented, before we mirrored. Alright, because otherwise we have to do it manually. Alright, my Blender crashed for some reason. But we can go into edit mode and delete this left part of the mesh, delete the bones. I can go to object mode, select everything that I parented, Alt P, clear parent. Right, just like that, I can just go back to my bones, edit mode. So there's no real big deal if you wanna just reparent this at all. Doesn't matter at all. Alright, so I'm just gonna first create the create the IK for my leg before I mirror this now. I've learned from my mistakes. So we're gonna go to the leg, and we have to pretty much follow the same setup, right? We need a pull target for the knee. Where does the knee have to point at? We need a controller, which is going to be the first part in that actual chain, which is going to be the heel right there. Right, edit mode. Gonna select this bone, E and Y. Select it, Alt P, clip parent. Same for the knee, E, Y. Select it, Alt P, clip parent. And I'm just gonna move this to the left to make it very clear to Blender where it has to move. Name this knee ik.l. This one, heel ik.l. Beautiful. Go to pose mode. We can now just select the first bone in the chain and add an IK. Inverse kinematics. Targets armature. Bone is heel ik.l. Pull targets knee ik.l. Armature first, of course, and then knee ik.l. Nice. Did it rotate? It may have rotated a little. No, it doesn't look like it. It looked like it snapped a little bit, but I think it will change if we set this chain length to 2 once again. There we go. Alright. Nice. Alright, so now if we move this, you can see boop, boop, we get a nice IK chain for this leg. Beautiful. Now the leg doesn't really follow what we want. Right, if we move this up, it's going to move our feet backwards. While in real life, you can also keep your foot up instead of bending. Right, you can see the foot rotates depending on the IK. Right, if we want to keep that straight, we can go into edit mode and we can select this first part of our armature. This is called the heel, and hold shift, select our actual IK, Control P, and we can just set this to keep offset, just like that. All right, now let's go to pose mode. And there's one more thing we need to do. And that is, we're going to select that bone. We're going to add a bone constraint. We're going to do copy. Let's see, what is it again? Let's see. We're going to do copy location. Copy location. There we go. Armature. And the bone, we want it to be parented to this bone, right? So we want it to be stuck to that bone pretty much, which is going to be lower leg.l. Nice. Well, it's going to move up. Actually, we may have added it to the wrong bone. We're adding it to the to the IK controller. That's not the idea. We want it to be added to this one. Sorry about that. Add bone constraint. Copy location. Armature. Lower leg.l. Right, it's gonna move up. Don't worry about that at all. We have a head and tail option. We can set this to 1. Right, 0 will be the start of the bone. 1 will be the end. We want this to stick at the end. Now if we move this foot, it's going to be nice and straight, and it will not detach or anything. It's just looking nice, like an actual foot is supposed to move, I guess. Beautiful. Control S, save your file every now and then. I'm going to go to edit mode, And yeah, everything is looking great. All right, so now we can actually mirror our stuff, right? Or if you want to make a tail, we can do that too. Let's make a tail quickly. It is the same idea again, right? So what I'm gonna do is select this first bone right there, right? A tail is connected to the spine pretty much. I'm gonna press E, select it, Alt P. It's already disconnected. That's perfect. Just move that there to the start of the tail. This is going to be right there. I'm gonna actually make this a little bit low poly, right? I don't want a lot of bones there. That's gonna take too much time. E, Y, E, Y, E, Y. One more, E, Y. There we go. Beautiful. Now, like I said, give Blender a slight indication of where this all needs to bend. For example, if I want this tail to bend up, I'm just gonna move this down a little bit. I'm gonna move this down a little bit. Sorry, this. So each of these bones groups have a slight bend in them. Just like that. Right? Doesn't have to be big. Small will do. Just fine. And the bones don't have to be completely centered in the tail as well. Not at all. Right, I'm going to select this bone. Hold Shift. Select this like tail bone. Control P. Keep offset. So now it will keep its offset nicely to this bone right there. Now, once again, we need an IK controller right at the tail point, because this is the first bone in the chain. Right, extrude that to the right, select it, Alt P, click parent. Now we can select a pole target, or we can add a pole target here to make the tail bend a specific way, but we can also try it in pretty much a different way. And actually, let's try the pole target first and see if that works. Right, so we're gonna select just one of these bones, doesn't matter. E, Z, right there. Select it, Alt P, click parent. I'm gonna move this down. Right, so I want this tail to bend down first, so the pole target is gonna be below the tail. Name it tail.ik. No, let's name it tail pole.ik this time, because this is going to be tail.ik. Beautiful. Go to pose mode. First bone in the chain. Add bone constraint. Inverse kinematics. Target's armature. Bone is tail ik. Pole target. Armature. Bone. Tail. Pole ik. Beautiful. Now chain length is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 bones in the ik. Set this to 5. There we go. And we can now try to move this. Alright, so you can see that the pole target rotation is not set up right. Alright, so let's select the pole target, or sorry, let's select the inverse kinematics and change this pole target to -90. You can always see what direction it has to be by just swiping it, right? Negative direction seems good. -90 it is. There we go. So now if we move this, you can see the bone bend nicely as a tail shape. And you can set the direction, for example, more to the left by moving the pole target there. So you can still control it quite manually, which is beautiful. All right, so let's make this nice and straight again. Control Z this a few times. Remember that we control Z it that often that we have to reset this to -90 real quick. There we go. Save your file. And let's just mirror all of these bones now. All right, go to edit mode, draw a box around them. This one too. And let's hit armature. Symmetrize. There we go. Beautifully to the left. Now we can go to object mode. Right, the last step is to parent the mesh to the bones. Quite easy. But before we do that, there's one more thing we need to check. Select your armature. Going to pose mode. And we have to check that the bones that are used for the IK, for example, the pole targets, the IK controllers, anything that shouldn't deform our mesh, so shouldn't move them around, they should have deform unchecked. Okay, otherwise it's gonna assign weights to those bones as well, which means that we can move our mesh with this bone, for example, right? And this moves past our actually bone structure, past our mesh. Right? So we don't want this IK controller to control the deformation of our mesh. We have our bone structure for that. This is just a help tool, a helpful tool we use to control the movement of the armature, but it shouldn't deform the mesh itself. Right, so move this back. Any bone that shouldn't deform your mesh, we're gonna select it by holding Shift. This one, that one, that one. Tail, pole target of the arms, IK controller of the arms. These should all be used to control the armature, but not to deform the mesh, right? So uncheck that, right mouse, copy to selected. So now it's going to be copied to all the selected bones automatically. Beautiful. Go to object mode, select your object. Now I'm not going to select these eyes because last time we did that, they were parented wrong. So I'm just going to select my mesh, main mesh, hold shift, select the armature, Ctrl P with automatic weights. Now I'm going to select my eye sockets, my eyeballs, my mesh, hit tab, and just select the top bone. Head out of edit mode by hitting tab, Ctrl P, and just parent the eyes to that last bone, right? Just the head bone. Connect that. Now select the armature, go to pose mode, and just play around, right? It should all be connected if it works. And we can check that, right? Oh yeah, that's moving quite nicely. Our shoulder is moving with it a little bit. That should be something we could fix in weight paint. We can move this hand right there. This we can set it up in a pose where it's celebrating, screaming, yeah. For the legs, we can make it walk, for example. Now, if this happens, it means we're moving our IK controller past the pole target, right? Which means we have to just move this out a little bit farther, right there. So now it can move freely. Beautiful. It can dance. It can kick. That's beautiful, right? So we can do that. We can make it do like a funny pose if we want. Even we can move this knee out a little bit if we want. Move this one out a little bit if we want. We can, for example, move this elbow in. We can control our entire mesh and even the tail. All right. So if you go to side view, you can move this up, for example, just like that. This one too. Right. Move the pole target just like that. Now the reason why this is looking so jaggedy, not sure which one it is because we only have a few bones, right? And a best case scenario, we would add a lot more bones there to control the movement just better, right? To make it all nice and smooth, right? Because we have only a limited amount of bones, it's just going to look a little bit jagged, right? So it depends on how much work, how much effort you want to spend on this. And we can also try to fix it in weight paint, right? Like I said, for example, if we move this arm, the shoulder moves a little bit as well. We could change that, and I will show you a very nice way, something that you will use for sure at some point. If you go to object mode and first select your armature and then your mesh, then change this to weight paint, you can hold Control and select any bone you'd like. And you can see how the actual weight paint is then matched to your bone, right? So if we hold Control and select the upper arm, we can see what parts of the mesh are actually connected to that bone, right? So if we want this shoulder to not be controlled with the upper arm bone that much, we can set the weight of this brush to 0 and just remove some of this weight right there, all right? So move that closer to the actual arm. Oh, that last part was not supposed to be. So we can move that closer, just like that. Just like that. Move your camera around a little bit. Everything that is light blue, green, it'll be assigned, right? Red is the most high value. It's 1, which means that your entire part of the mesh is controlled by the bone. For example, the upper arm itself is controlled by the upper arm bone. It's completely red, right? But we don't want this entire part to be light blue because it will also be controlled by that upper arm bone. We only want the arm and a little bit of the shoulder, like that. And now we can blur it with a second tool to make it nice and smooth, just like that. Now let's go back to object mode, select our armature, pose mode. And now if we move this arm, you can see that the shoulder, it still moves a little bit, but it's much less, right? In a optimum scenario, best case scenario, you would spend more time into weight painting if you want it to be perfect. But this looks nice, right? Your shoulder will always move a little bit with your arm, so that's perfect. Now the face also moves a little bit, so that's something we'll change. But you can change that yourself in the weight paint mode. Now there's just one problem. If we move this up, you can see that the arms stay in place, right? Not everything is parented properly. So go to edit mode, and there's a few things we need to parent. Now first go to pose mode, hit A, pose, clear transform, all. just to prevent any kind of weird movements after we are done. All right, so I want these arms to be parented to the chest, right? So select your upper arms by holding shift and then your chest, Control P, keep offset. Now I want these pelvis bones to be parented to the tailbone, pretty much, Control P, keep offset. And I want the upper legs to be parented, well, right one to be parented with the right pelvis, keep offset, and this one with the left one, Control P, keep offset. Beautiful. Now let's go to pose mode and see what happens. Right, if we now move this bone, you can see that it moves the entire character. You can make it jump, paw, caw, like a bird, pretty much flying away. Make it flap, caw. Wait, where's the bone to make them do that? There we go. Right, you can do whatever. You can make him sit down, lie down, move your spine. Right, you can make it get into all sorts of fun positions. Make him do sit-ups. Do whatever, right? Have some fun with it. Now, you need to remember that your pull target will define the rotation of your bones. So whenever you move your IK controller past that pull target, it will switch directions. Right, so make sure to move that pull target to where you want it to aim and make it nice and distant from that actual IK group, like that. Right, so you can even scratch your own back of your head like that. Alright, so I think this tutorial has been going on for too long. I'm losing some brain cells over here. But that's how you animate, that's how you add bones to your character. Alright, hit A, pose, clear transform, all. And you can now start animating, right, by just entering keyframes. For example, we want it to be squatting, right? So first things first, keyframe for the location right here. Few frames apart, GZ, move it down, press I for location, right? So you can now see it's gonna squat down. Now few frames ahead, you can select this first one, Control C, Control V. Now the second one, Control C, move it further a bit, Control V, and you can now play it and it will just squat, get up, squat, get up, right? Exercising. It's easier in 3D than it's in real life. So that's pretty much how you animate your character. I hope that helped you in some way or another. I hope it takes some of the annoyances away in doing this. I hope it prevents some issues, prevents you from making some of the issues that I made in this tutorial. If it did, please leave a like or a comment or subscribe. Any of those would help me out a lot. Right, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.